Well, originally, my wife's cousin came up here because he was with the Customs Service in Palm Beach County, and he moved to Wellington. And so when we came up to visit them, we liked the community a great deal. This was in 1979, I'm talking about. And very much, a great deal of difference as to compare it is now. But it was a very unique place because I saw it a great deal like when I moved to Miami in the 1940s, from when my family first moved there. And a very small town, a lot of interesting happenings, but it was still very small. When we arrived in Miami when I was a youngster, we came in and the train actually stopped, believe it or not, on Flagler Street, downtown Miami. That was the end of the line for the Florida East Coast Railroad. So it was different. Then in I think it was 79 or 80, my cousin, Maurice Cousins, moved up here. He was with the Customs Service and moved up here, got stationed in West Palm Beach. But he chose and found Wellington to live in. At that time, it wasn't Wellington. It was just way out here in the country. Mm-hmm. But we liked it so much. We came up to visit them, and we liked it so much, and we said, well, I said to Maria, I said, hey, listen, if we're going to ever go change where we're living in Miami, which we were going to do, we were already thinking about it, I think I'd like to consider that area because it's very unique, very different. And kids can go to the school where we live, and they went to elementary, middle school, and high school right there, because Wellington Senior had just started. It was brand new. And a lot of it was the same way with the elementary and the middle schools. So it was a unique experience. It was very, very different. But yet it was reminiscent of what we had experienced years ago. That's what intrigued me so much about it. And that's why we liked it so much. And it continued to grow like that. So that's really what kept our interest in it. And as time went by, I got more and more involved in the way it was running. And when we came about starting to form a government and everything like that, I was interested in and involved in that. And it was an experience. We started with the first Wellington. That was the original body, the organization that it started with. But then subsequently, I think it was in the the early 90s that we started to consider the fact that, well, could we become a city? Could we become an incorporated area? But the first time we tried it, it didn't work. The folks in the community didn't care for it. But then the second time around, they voted for it. So we became a city, and that's the rest is all really history. How we began and how we took a responsibility for the community, and the rest is all, like I said, it's experiences that had happened. A lot of interesting people that took part and were involved in it, and as we grew, more and more folks came, and as time went by, as like with anything else, some changes took place, but most of what we started with, what caused us to incorporate, become a city, have really maintained itself. The new leadership has really followed, I think, a great deal of what the original people that came here and hoped that Wellington would become or be, or really were able to continue that process. And so that's pretty much where we are. The late 70s, early 80s, we came to the conclusion that Miami was not going to be the same as we had remembered it to be. And we looked around and said, where do we want to go? Where are we going to find someplace? So we drove north a little bit, and as we proceeded going in different directions, when we came across Wellington, we said, wow, it wasn't even Wellington, and it was just western West Palm Beach. And we said, this is a nice area. We might want to consider it. And my wife's cousin, who was with the Customs Department at the time, U.S. Customs, they moved up here and they bought a home. Avondale Woods, which was one of the first communities in Wellington. And they moved in there, and we went up to visit him. We stayed for a weekend, and Marie said, "Gee, you know, this is really a very nice place." But only thing that was here then at that time was the shopping center, which now I think is where the Winn-Dixie was on Forest Hill Boulevard, and I forget the other name of the city. I mean the street. But that was all that was here. There was nothing here. But you could see that it was going to grow. So I liked it and looked at it a lot. And I had been practicing dentistry, and I opened a practice up here and practiced for 10 years, and then I finally retired. But I was going to retire. I was going to finish what I was doing and finish my practice, and that's where I went. I got involved in the community primarily out of the fact that it was new and different, and well, to me it was anyway. And I had first started to get somewhat involved when we left down in Miami, and it intrigued me because Wellington was like where I lived in Miami, a small part of the city, because I lived down in South Dade at the time, and it was a growing community, but encompassing a small area and involving people that lived within the area. And we liked the idea that what was here, and we were fascinated by the fact that you could find something still like that was a place where people were becoming interested in living and enjoyed this area. And we met people who had just moved here also and were living here. People that I knew and started to know. I got to be friends with people. Kathy Foster was one of the first. We became friends. We lived probably when I first lived there in Meadowland Cove, and when we lived there, it was just starting out. Pinewood Manor, that's our place where we very first home there, and Kathy happened to live right across the street, and my youngest daughter, became very close and friendly with her, and friendship grew, and that's the way it started. So, and when it came time for Wellington to make the change, grow, like I saw that possibility, and I told Kathy, I said, you know, you would do well to do this, and she ran in 1990 and was elected, and the rest is really history. It really is just the way it just mushroomed from there. And more and more people that we knew got involved in the community and so forth. And it was just that way, you know. Primarily the city became just a conglomerate of people that were here early on and just went from there. So that's it. That's primarily how I got started of it, because then somebody said, well, why don't you run? Why don't you get involved? And so I did in 1992. I got involved and said, you know, I think I'll run, and I did. And I ran for this. Not that time it was a city council, but we were just an incorporated area, and becoming then a community. So then later on, years went by, and we had the opportunity to become incorporated in 1996, 95, and took that opportunity and then become. We got our corporate information, and we were able to incorporate it. In 1995, believe it or not, December of 1995, when we were first incorporated, and some of that information is still available. I mean, everybody says to us, it was 96. Yes, we became an operational unit in 96, but we actually were incorporated in December of 1995. That's when it all began. And I had the opportunity to be involved with that. Tom, I remember, was involved in it because he was working for the county at that time with the with the fire rescue. And we became close, we became friends. Tom and I became really very close friends from that period on, and stayed that way for many, many years. But got involved in the city as it was an entity. And if I remember correctly, Tom didn't want to get become part of the. He didn't want to vote. He didn't want to run for office, and I got elected. And I said, wait a minute, you can't be doing this and getting me involved, and you don't want to get involved. So we talked him into running, and he was elected, of course. And the rest is really history. The very first group of people that were involved. And I remember mostly, I don't know why they stuck out in my mind, but Tom and Kathy were the one. Oh, Paul Adams was another name. When I look at Wellington and now what it's become, I say, it's pretty much what originally we looked at, what we thought about when we sat down in the early years to say, what are we going to be? What are we going to be like? And I don't know if we really had that far depth in thinking about what we were going to do or what we were going to be. But we pretty much stayed on line with what early on, what the folks that were here before us wanted Wellington to become. They liked the idea that we were a smaller community. We weren't a big thing. We didn't want to become a full-blown city. Excuse me. That wasn't what the goal was. We wanted to have the homey atmosphere that was here. But we wanted to also, we knew we had to become larger. We knew we had to incorporate the horse industry to become that entity, because the horse industry was an integral part of this community, and you couldn't grow and you couldn't be anything unless we incorporated that. And at the early on too, there was always a bit of a separation between the horse industry and the regular folks that live in Wellington, and you knew that it was present. But over time, that separation became an entity that people really didn't pay much attention to. We became closer and started to realize that one could not exist without the other, and that's what happened. So I saw that as a beginning, and it did work out a lot like that. So we're very happy that happened. I really am.